Today, in the sequence of online study, today I am going to discuss class 8th science chapter 4, name materials, metals and non-metals. This chapter is started with the word materials. Then question arises, what is materials? Material means substance, anything which occupies a space and has mass is called a substance, a matter, or material. You are familiar with a number of materials like iron, aluminium, copper, etc. Some materials are like this: iron, coal, sulfur, aluminium, copper, etc. Can you name the materials which are metals? The rest of the materials are non-metals. Metals can be distinguished from non-metals on the basis of their physical and chemical properties. Recall the word luster, hardness. These all are the physical properties of metals. First of all, I am going to discuss how can we distinguish between metals and non-metals. There are two methods to distinguish which are metals and which are non-metals. First is physical method, which is based on physical properties, and second method is chemical property, which is described as follows. Physical properties of metals and non-metals. Have you ever seen a blacksmith beating an iron piece or an article made up of iron like a spade, a shovel, an axe? Do you find a change in the shape of these articles on beating? Would you expect a similar change if we try to beat wood log? You saw that the shape of the iron nail and the aluminum wire changed on beating. If they were beaten harder, these could be changed into sheets. You might be familiar with silver foil used for decorating sweets. You must also be familiar with the aluminium foil used for wrapping food. The property of metals by which they can be beaten into thin sheets is called malleability. Malleability is a word which is commonly known as an adjective, and malleable means noun, property of metal. Malleability is an adjective, malleable is a noun which is used for metals. Malleability is the property of metals by which they can be beaten into thin sheets when it is beaten hard with hammer. This is a characteristic property of metals. As you must have noticed, materials like pencil lead do not show this property. Can we call these materials metals? No. Why? Because it can not be beaten into thin sheets. It is brittle, it can be broken into pieces when we beat with hammer. Can you hold a hot metallic pen which is without a plastic or a wooden handle and not get hot? Perhaps not. Why? Try to list some other experiences in life which a wooden or plastic handle protects you from being hot while handling hot things. On the basis of these experiences, what can you say about the conduction of heat by wood and plastic? You might have seen an electrician using his screwdriver What kind of handle does it have? Why? Let us find out. You observe that iron rod, nail, copper wire are good conductors, while rolled sulfur piece and coal piece are poor conductors because these materials have no any free electrons to flow in sulfur and coal, whereas copper, iron rod, nail, these are the metals which have free electrons and it is joined with a electric source. Electrons start flowing, therefore they conduct electricity. Where do you find the use of aluminium and copper wires? Have you seen wires of coal? Definitely not. The property of metal by which it can be drawn into wires is called ductility. Have you ever noticed the difference in sound on dropping an iron sheet or plate or metal coin and a piece of coal on the floor? If not, you can try it now. Do you note any difference in the sound produced? Have you seen wooden bells in temples? Can you give a reason? The things made of metals produce a ringing sound when struck hard. Suppose you have two boxes similar in appearance, one made of wood and the other of metal. Can you tell which box is made of metal by striking both the boxes? Since metals produce ringing sounds, they are said to be sonorous. The materials other than metals are not sonorous. After performing all these activities, we can say that some materials are hard, lustrous, malleable, ductile, sonorous, and good conductors of heat and electricity. The materials which generally possess these properties are called metals. The examples of metals are iron, copper, aluminium, calcium, magnesium, etc. In other hand, materials like coal, sulfur are soft and dull in appearance. They break down into a powdery mass on tapping with a hammer. They are not sonorous and are poor conductors of heat and electricity. These materials are called non-metals. Examples of non-metals are sulfur, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, etc. Metals like sodium and potassium are soft and can be cut with a knife. Mercury is the only metal which is found in liquid state at room temperature. These are exceptions because metals are hard, lustrous, produce a ringing sound, high melting point and boiling point. It has high density, it has ductility, it is good conductor of heat and electricity, whereas sodium and potassium are the two metals which are exceptions, which are generally soft and can cut with a knife. On the other hand, no, on the other hand, non-metals. The physical properties of non-metals are as follows. Non-metals are not malleable. It means they have no any property of malleability. They, they have another property called ductility. Non-metals do not have such type of character called ductility. If they struck with a hammer, it can be broken into pieces. Non-metals are generally gaseous in liquid and in solid state. Some examples of non-metals which are solid at room temperature are sulfur, coal, carbon. and only one non-metal which is liquid at room temperature is bromine, and the other 21 non-metals among them are oxygen, chlorine, fluorine, bromine, iodine. These are the halogens. Eh, These are the halogens: chlorine, fluorine, bromine, iodine. But oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, carbon, these are also non-metals. Among them, oxygen are non-metal. On the basis of physical properties, metals are bad conductors of heat and electricity. They have no any peculiar sound. It means it do not have
जोर से
a
बोला
special sound when it is struck. It has no luster. It has not malleable.